My husband's name was on the deed, mine wasn't. That was the first mistake I let slide, and I told myself it was fine because we were partners, because we trusted each other, because I was the one who had found the property, negotiated the price, secured the contractor, and managed the renovation down to the last coat of paint. The deed was just paperwork. That's what I told myself. His name was Kevin. We had been together for 6 years, married for 3 of them. We met when I was 26 and working as a project coordinator for a mid-size commercial real estate firm in Charlotte. He was charming in the way that some men are charming. Effortlessly, almost carelessly. He knew how to walk into a room. He knew how to make you feel like you were the most interesting person he had ever met. He also knew how to spend money that wasn't his. I didn't see that part clearly until much later. We bought our first property together in 2019, a duplex in a neighborhood that was just starting to turn, coffee shops opening, a bike lane going in, young couples pushing strollers past houses that still had plywood over their windows. Kevin said it was too risky. I ran the numbers 3 times and showed him why it wasn't. He said okay. We bought it. We rented both units within 6 weeks and cleared enough every month to cover the mortgage and put $400 into savings. He called himself a real estate investor after that at every dinner party we went to. I didn't correct him. I thought that was love. Letting someone have their version of a story even when you lived through the real one. The second property was mine alone, technically. Kevin's credit had taken a hit from a car loan he'd let go delinquent before we met. I didn't know about that until we tried to finance together and the lender flagged it. We worked around it. Everything went in my name. I was the one making the mortgage payments anyway, pulling from the account where I kept my income separate, something I had started doing not out of distrust, but out of habit. I had always been careful with money in the way that people who grew up without enough of it tend to be. My mother grew up in Appalachian, Ohio. She raised me mostly on her own after my father left when I was 4. I remember being in 2nd grade and understanding without anyone explaining it to me that we had less than other families. I packed my own lunch every day, usually a peanut butter sandwich and whatever fruit was on sale that week. I wore the same pair of sneakers from September to May. I wasn't unhappy. I just learned early that stability was something you built with your own hands, quietly, without announcing it to anyone. Kevin came from money. Not generational wealth, but comfortable money. Parents who paid for his college, a car that appeared in the driveway on his 18th birthday, no student loans. He was generous with it and genuinely kind in a lot of ways. But he had never had to calculate anything. He didn't have the instinct. By 2021, I had acquired 3 additional properties on my own, a single-family rental in Gastonia, a small commercial space in Noda that I leased to a local pottery studio, a condo in South End that I short-term rented. I managed all of them. I handled the tenant issues, the maintenance calls, the quarterly taxes, the insurance renewals. I did all of this while working full-time, while cooking dinner most nights, while showing up to Kevin's family events and remembering his mother's birthday and asking his brother about his kids by name. Kevin knew the properties existed. He just didn't know the details. He didn't ask. We had started talking about starting our own property management company together. His idea, actually, though the framework I had been sketching out in a notebook for 2 years looked almost identical to what he described over drinks one night like it had just occurred to him. I said nothing. I thought we were building towards something. I thought we were a team. The LLC was filed in both our names. That part at least was equal. Things started to shift in early 2022. Kevin had a college friend. I'll call him a college friend, though I suspect they had reconnected in a way that was something more, who had relocated to Charlotte and was suddenly around a lot. She was in finance. She laughed at everything Kevin said. She asked him questions about the business like he was the one running it. I noticed. I didn't say anything right away. I had a commercial lease negotiation that month, a tenant who was threatening to break early, and a refinance I was trying to close before rates moved again. I didn't have the bandwidth to also manage Kevin's ego and whatever was or wasn't happening. In March, I found a credit card statement I wasn't supposed to see. He had left it in the pocket of a jacket I was taking to the dry cleaner. $14,000 in charges I didn't recognize, a hotel in Charleston, dinners at restaurants we had never been to together, 2 flights. I put the jacket in the dry clean pile and the statement in a folder in the back of my filing cabinet, and I didn't touch either of them for 6 days. I needed to think. That's how I work. I don't react immediately. I process, I plan, and then I move. I called a lawyer on day 7. A woman named, well, I'll just say she was good. Excellent, actually. She had been practicing family law and asset protection in North Carolina for 19 years. I had found her by asking a commercial attorney I trusted for a referral. I told her everything. I brought the folder. She asked me who owned what. I walked her through it. The duplex was joint. The LLC was joint. The 3 other properties were in my name alone, all of them. She looked at the LLC operating agreement and pointed to something I had missed, or rather, something I had not thought carefully enough about when we filed. Because Kevin and I were married and the LLC was community property under our current setup, any division would be complicated. He had contributed nothing financially to the LLC's operations, but his name was on it. She said we needed to fix some things, and we needed to fix them quietly and quickly before he knew I knew. I asked her what that looked like. She told me, I want to be clear that everything I did from that point forward was legal. I am not telling this story to brag. I am telling it because for a long time I felt ashamed that I had let things get to the point where I had to protect myself from my own husband. I felt like I should have seen it coming. I felt like the careful girl who packed her own lunches should have known better. But knowing better isn't always the same as being able to act on it in time. Over the next 8 weeks, I restructured. My attorney drafted an amendment to the LLC operating agreement that more accurately reflected actual capital contributions and operational control. Because Kevin had signed a prior document acknowledging that all operating decisions and financial contributions came through me, something boilerplate that I'd had both of us sign when we launched, which he had not read carefully, the amendment was supportable. I also used proceeds from a refinance I had already initiated to buy out a small interest position that had been loosely attributed to marital assets. My attorney was meticulous. Nothing was hidden. Everything was documented. It was simply reorganized to reflect reality. By the time Kevin asked for a separation meeting in May, I had already had 3 conversations with my attorney and 1 with the forensic accountant she referred me to. He asked to meet at a coffee shop. I thought that was a little cruel, doing it in public, but I said yes. He came in looking uncomfortable in the way that people do when they've rehearsed something and are now having to actually deliver it. He had talking points. I could tell. He said he had been doing a lot of thinking. He said he felt like we had grown in different directions. He said he thought it would be better for both of us if we separated. I asked him if he had somewhere to stay. He said yes. I nodded, and I ordered another coffee, and I told him I understood. He looked surprised that I wasn't crying. I think he expected something messier. I think he had maybe even hoped for it, because mess would have given him something to push back against. I wasn't going to give him that. The divorce proceedings started in June. His attorney sent a letter outlining his position on the shared assets. He was claiming an interest in the LLC, in the properties held in my name on the basis that marital funds had contributed to their acquisition or management, and in several other assets he described in language I found almost impressive in how creative it was. My attorney responded. It took a while. These things do. But the amended operating agreement held. The documentation of my individual contributions held. The forensic accountant's report, which showed clearly that no marital funds had been commingled into the properties held solely in my name, held. The duplex was the one genuinely shared asset. We agreed to sell it, split the proceeds, and be done. Kevin's attorney tried twice more to claim an interest in the commercial property in Nodea. Both times, my attorney filed responses that made the claim look, as she put it with professional restraint, unsupported by evidence. We signed the final divorce papers in October. I was 31 years old. I walked out of my attorney's office on a Tuesday afternoon and I stood on the sidewalk in the pale fall sun and I took a long breath. I had 4 properties in my name, a restructured LLC with clear documentation of sole ownership and operational control, and a business that had been generating consistent income for 2 years. Kevin had the settlement from the duplex sale, which came to slightly more than $80,000 for his share. He also had, as far as I could tell, a new girlfriend who laughed at his stories. I wished him well. Genuinely, not because I had forgiven everything or because I wasn't still angry in the specific, tired way that you are angry when you realize you subsidized someone else's self-image for 6 years, but because carrying it was work and I had real work to do. The pottery studio and Noda renewed their lease and asked about expanding into the adjacent unit, which had just come available. I said I'd have my LLC look at the numbers. That's how I said it. My LLC. I drove home, and I fed my cat, and I opened my laptop, and I pulled up the spreadsheet where I tracked every property's monthly performance. I updated the numbers. I made a note about the expansion inquiry. I sent 3 emails. Some people rebuild after a thing like that by getting loud about it. They post. They process publicly. They need witnesses. I understand that. I'm not judging it. But I've rebuilt quietly, the way I've always built everything. 1 line in the spreadsheet at a time, 1 decision documented, 1 piece of paper filed, 1 property that is mine and no one else's. The numbers don't lie. They never did. I always just had to be the one paying close enough attention to read them. I didn't celebrate when it was over. I'm not sure I even fully exhaled until about a week after the papers were signed, when I was sitting at my kitchen table on a Sunday morning with coffee and my laptop open to the property spreadsheet, and I realized the only name I needed to look at was my own. There's a version of this story where I blame Kevin for everything, and there are parts that are genuinely his fault. The deception, the credit card charges, the way he let someone else believe he had built what I built. Those things were choices he made, and choices carry weight. What you do follows you, not in some mystical sense, but in the practical, documented paper trail sense that I have come to understand very well. Kevin's version of the story, the one where he was the investor, the visionary, the one running things, collapsed the moment it met actual records. That's how it works. The truth doesn't disappear because you stop looking at it. But I also had to be honest with myself about what I let happen. I was so focused on building that I stopped paying attention to the structure I was building inside of. I assumed good faith because it was easier. I signed documents without reading every line because I trusted the person across from me. I let his name appear in places where my work was the only real thing present. Those weren't Kevin's mistakes. Those were mine. And I had to own them before I could actually fix them. What I know now is that integrity isn't just about being honest with other people. It's about being honest with yourself, about what you see, what you know, and what you're choosing to ignore. I knew things were wrong before I found that credit card statement. I felt it. I just didn't want to act on it because acting on it meant the life I had built with this person was going to change. So I looked away for a little while, and looking away cost me time. The second thing I know is that clarity saved me more than anything else. Not anger, not revenge, not the satisfaction of watching someone get what they deserved. Though I will admit that watching an attorney quietly dismantle a claim built on nothing is its own kind of poetry. What actually saved me was sitting down with real numbers, real documents, real legal advice, and thinking carefully about what was true and what needed to happen next. Every decision I made in those 8 weeks came from that place. Not from emotion, from understanding. And then there's the part that doesn't make a good story but is maybe the most important part. I kept going. After the separation meeting at the coffee shop, I went home and I answered emails. After the final papers were signed, I opened the spreadsheet. After all of it, I called the pottery studio back about the expansion, because the work was still there. It had always been there. And I had spent years building something real, which meant I had something real to return to. The girl who packed her own lunches and wore the same sneakers from September to May understood something that took me a little longer to remember, that what you build with your own hands, carefully with your own hands, carefully with your eyes open, is yours. Nobody can sign that away.